Hello guys, we gonna have this short video about the kind of sentences in order to have a good account of what you're gonna study for the quiz, inshallah. So be with me.
Sentence and clause. A sentence is a set of words that is complete in itself and generally contains a subject and a main verb. A sentence also contains the correct punctuation. A clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a verb. Independent clause is a type of clause that makes sense on its own as a sentence. Subordinate clause doesn't make sense on its own as a sentence and is often referred to as dependent clause. Relative clause provides extra information about a noun. It is a type of dependent clause.
Okay, so before we start explaining the simple sentence and the other kind of sentences, we have to make sure that you understand what is the sentence and that the sentence is a clause and the kind of sentences or clauses as independent clause and subordinate clause, and make sure that the relative clauses starting with who or which or whose or these relative pronouns are going to be also part of the dependent clause.
Simple sentence. Simple sentences contain one independent clause. It contains a subject and a verb. For example, she brushes her teeth in the morning. The baby laughed. Compound sentence. Compound sentences contain two independent clauses and are linked by a coordinating conjunction. Coordinating conjunctions can include for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. For example, she brushes her teeth in the morning, so her teeth are nice and clean. Here, we can see the sentence without the coordinating conjunction. We have two independent clauses that each make sense on their own as separate sentences. Another example is, the baby laughed at the cartoon and he played with his toys. It's important to note that we use commas before the coordinating conjunction.
So according to the compound sentence, we have two independent clauses joined with one of the fanboys conjunctions, which we call them coordinating conjunctions, for and nor and but, or, yet, and so. And don't forget there is a comma before the conjunction, as you see, and each part of the compound sentence is considered to be an independent clause. Don't forget that, please.
Complex sentence. Complex sentences contain one independent clause and one or more subordinate clause. Subordinate clauses are linked by either a subordinating conjunction, for example, although, after, because, since, when, etc., or a relative pronoun, for example, who, which, that, and many more. Examples of complex sentences include, she brushes her teeth in the morning after waking up. As you can see, we have our independent clause, which can make sense on its own as a separate sentence, and then the dependent clause, which is after waking up. This wouldn't make sense on its own as a sentence. The baby laughed because the cartoon was funny. I can't wait to meet everyone at the reunion dinner, which is tomorrow. The last example shows you a relative clause with a relative pronoun, which. It is important to note that we use commas when the dependent clause comes first, but if the sentence begins with the independent clause followed by the dependent, then we don't use a comma.
So accordingly, for the complex sentence, you have one independent clause and at least one subordinate clause joined with one of the subordinating conjunction, which include also the relative pronouns. As you see, the green clause is independent clause and the red one is dependent because it starts with the conjunction like after and because and also which in the last sentence. So we have one independent clause and one subordinate clause.
Compound complex sentence. Compound complex sentences contain two or more independent clauses and one or more dependent clause that is linked with a coordinating conjunction. For example, I woke up in the morning and I brushed my teeth even though everyone else was sleeping. Here we can see the independent clauses and the dependent clause.
Okay, so let us talk here about the compound complex. Here we have two or more independent, at least two independent clauses and one dependent clause or subordinate clause. So as you see in the green part, these are two independent clauses joined with one of the fanboys here like and. I woke up in the morning, this is an independent clause, can stand by itself. I brushed my teeth, this is another independent clause. But you have in red a dependent clause, which is a subordinate clause starting with a subordinating conjunction, even though, and it can't stand by itself. So we have two or more independent clauses and one or more dependent clauses. Take care that you here gonna find one of the fanboys conjunctions and one of the subordinate or subordinating conjunctions. So let us take a short quiz about this part together and check our understanding of the four kinds of sentences. Okay, so here the first question, what does a simple sentence consist of? Of course, the simple sentence consists of one independent clause. Yeah, that's right. So another question, what does a compound sentence consist of? Compound sentence, two independent clauses linked by one of the coordinating conjunction fanboys. So as we said, this is correct. Also, what does a complex sentence consist of? The complex sentence has one independent clause and one subordinate clause or more. That is, you link by a subordinating conjunction. So that's right. The last question is what does a compound complex sentence consist of? When we say compound complex, so we have two independent clauses and one subordinate clause joined with one of the fanboys conjunctions and one of the subordinating conjunctions.